It's easy to assume that the days of terrible licensed video games are behind us, but every so often a new release comes along to remind you just how bad it can still get. While the current generation has delivered some genuinely great adaptations of beloved IPs like RoboCop Rogue City, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, it's also seen a steady drip of disappointments, bizarre ideas and outright disasters dressed up in franchise clothing. Whether cursed by poor execution, greedy monetization, or baffling creative choices, I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com and these are the 10 worst licensed video games of the generation so far. Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. When it comes to licensed IP, few studios had a better track record than Rocksteady. The Batman Arkham trilogy, where ignoring the Batmobile from Arkham Knight, thank you, helped redefine superhero games with care, style, and razor-sharp design. So when Rocksteady announced they were tackling the Suicide Squad IP, expectations were sky high. Instead, we got a 9-year development slog that produced a tone-deaf live service shooter nobody wanted. Kill the Justice League stumbled out of the gate with generic loot mechanics, samey missions, and a personality vacuum at its core. It wasn't exactly broken, just painfully bland, which somehow felt worse coming from a studio once known for excellence. Worse still, its failure triggered a mass exodus. Rocksteady's co-founders and key creative leads left shortly after release, as Warner Bros. Reportedly gutted the studio's staff. What was once one of the most respected developers in the game was now a cautionary tale. While it might be more technically competent than some games on the rest of this list, Suicide Squad earns its spot because of what it represents. A studio that once raised the bar, now stumbling to meet it. In a word, tragic.
Oi, you! What are you buying? What are you selling? Well, I'm so pleased you asked, because if you want to stay safe online and browse freely, NordVPN is running an unbelievable deal at the minute that gets you up to 76% off subscriptions and 3 months free. Just scan the QR code in this video or click the link in the description below, and it's all yours.
Avatar: The Last Airbender, Quest for Balance. One of the most beloved animated shows of all time, a masterful blend of Western storytelling and Eastern-inspired animation, rich in world-building, humor, emotional depth, and unforgettable characters. Well, how the hell did an Avatar game not get any of that right? Quest for Balance is a great name for this game because it should have been a slam dunk, a retelling of the show's Book 1 with elemental combat and co-op play. Instead, it delivered unresponsive combat, spammed puzzles, and had camera controls so frustrating you'd want to launch a fireball at your console. Characters resemble wax figures, dialogue sounds AI generated, and the cutscenes, well, the less said the better. It certainly feels like a PS2 era tie-in that somehow arrived 15 years late. Worst of all, it completely squandered the emotional weight and spirit of the Avatar universe, offering little more than a hollow, low-budget recap of a story fans already know by heart. Cobra Kai 2, Dojos Rising. The first Cobra Kai game was a surprisingly scrappy underdog. Shabby, sure, but packed with fan service and just enough charm to land a crane kick to the nostalgic part of your brain. The sequel, not so much. Dojos Rising had all the ingredients to build something better: a bigger budget, multiple playable dojos, online versus modes, and a broader cast pulled straight from the show. Unfortunately, what we got felt more like an early access prototype than a finished product. Combat was floaty and unsatisfying, hit detection was laughable, and the visuals would have looked dated over 10 years ago. Even walking around the overworld felt like wading through molasses. Worse still, it shipped with performance issues, soft locks, broken enemy AI, and laughably poor cutscene animation, all of which suggest that despite its current popularity, this franchise was treated as little more than a quick tie-in cash grab. There's heart in there somewhere, and fans really wanted to find it, but for a series that thrives on momentum, Cobra Kai 2 stumbled hard. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Wrath of Mutants. The TMNT games are enjoying something of a renaissance after a dire period since the 90s. Shredder's Revenge and Splintered Fate were incredible examples of what licensing this IP can bring, with a handful of future titles holding real promise as well. A modern console release of 2017's arcade brawler Wrath of Mutants then sadly arrived with barely any new ideas. A couple of extra bosses, couch co-op, and that was about it. The campaign was over faster than a pizza delivery, with no meaningful unlock, story progression, or real reason to come back once the credits rolled. Combat is button mashy at best, with all 4 turtles feeling pretty interchangeable. The power-ups are flashy but empty, like fireworks that forgot to explode, and the boss fights drag on without ever really getting interesting. Visually, it's passable, but nowhere near the standard fans now expect, especially with Shredder's Revenge truly raising the bar. And in a game designed around teamwork, there was no online multiplayer in 2024 for a game about a squad of heroes. The Walking Dead, Destinies, Survivors, and Outbreak. At this point, The Walking Dead feels like it's been adapted into more video games than it has seasons, and while Telltale's series proved just how powerful the IP could be, the last few years have been a different kind of horror entirely. Let's start with Destinies from 2023, a bizarre what-if retelling of the show where you can make timeline-shattering choices like killing Rick in the first 5 minutes. There's a fun idea buried in here, but what we got was a painful mess of old-generation visuals and very stilted animations. Then there's 2021's Survivors, a mobile strategy grindfest that monetizes your every move. Build a base, wait a few hours, pay to speed it up, repeat. It's less survival horror, more wallet horror, which is a term that we really need to get off the ground. Also, don't forget 2020's Onslaught, a VR shooter that somehow made killing zombies feel boring. Released alongside Saints and Sinners, arguably the gold standard for VR horror, this felt like a rushed cash-in by comparison. A phoned-in campaign, copy-pasted missions, and dialogue that sounds like it was recorded at gunpoint. 3 formats, same result. The Walking Dead proving there are countless ways to get it wrong. Marvel's Avengers. On paper, this should have been an easy win. Crystal Dynamics had just wrapped a successful reboot run of Tomb Raider, and the idea of them bringing that same cinematic flair, satisfying mechanics, and emotional storytelling to Earth's mightiest heroes felt like a match made in heaven. To be fair, there are moments when the potential shines through. The campaign opens with a bang, and there's a decent narrative spine carried by strong performances, particularly Sandra Saad as Kamala Khan. Each Avenger has a unique feel, and there's a clear thought behind how they control and interact with enemies. None of that matters though when the whole thing is crushed under the weight of Square Enix's aggressive live service model. From the moment you finish a mission, the game bombards you with currencies, grind loops, pointless gear upgrades, and constant reminders that you should be spending real money in the cosmetic shop. Worse still, the live service structure actively undermines the core experience. Loot is just dull, progression is a chore, and co-op missions are painfully repetitive. What could have been a stellar superhero action game was transformed into a soulless grindfest, a decision that killed the game's momentum dead and led to support being pulled entirely just 3 years later. For an IP this big and a studio like Crystal Dynamics at the helm, Marvel's Avengers should have been a triumph, and instead it's a complete black mark. South Park Snow Day. After The Stick of Truth and The Fractured But Whole, South Park proved it could genuinely deliver great RPGs. Sharp, hilarious, and surprisingly deep. They weren't just great licensed games, but they were great games full stop. So the idea of a next-gen follow-up was exciting, but what we got instead was Snow Day, a baffling step backwards in every possible way. Gone was the 2D animated style that perfectly matched the show, and in its place were basic 3D models that looked like Funko Pop prototypes dipped in Vaseline. The shift to a 3D co-op brawler might have worked in theory, but the execution was a mess. Combat was floaty and repetitive, and the humor, usually South Park's saving grace, never hit the right notes. There's a paper-thin narrative tying things together, but it never comes close to the storytelling quality of its predecessors. And while co-op could have added some chaotic fun, it's undermined by balance issues, clunky mechanics, and a general sense that the whole thing needed another year or 3 in the oven. In the end, Snow Day feels like a spin-off no one asked for, one that loses what made the previous game special and replaces it with chaos on a budget. For an IP that nailed it twice in a row, this was a yellow snowball to the face. Fast and Furious Crossroads. Everyone who knows their Norris from their Willis understands that Vin Diesel is a massive video game nerd. The first time he brought one of his franchises to the medium, the result was a cult classic. Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay, which still holds up as one of the best licensed games ever made. So why not give the same treatment to his bigger franchise, Fast and Furious? Well, this seemed to be why. Crossroads is less a video game and more an awkward tech demo stitched together with duct tape and explosions. Despite being developed by Slightly Mad Studios, best known for Project Cars, the handling is clunky, the action stiff, and the visuals wouldn't look out of place on a PS3 launch game. Even the star power of Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez can't save it. Their voice work just sounds bored, facial animations are wooden, and the story is pure Saturday morning nonsense, but not in the good way. Worse, it barely delivers on the one thing it should have nailed: car-based action. Set pieces are uninspired, the combat is laughable, and the entire thing can be finished in under 5 hours. Fast and Furious Crossroads feels like a tie-in from a bygone era, rushed, shallow, and completely out of touch with modern standards. It was delisted just 2 years after launch, and to be honest, that's 2 years too many. G.I. Joe. Operation Blackout. On paper, G.I. Joe should have been a perfect match for video games, a toy box full of colourful characters, ridiculous weapons, and cartoonish military mayhem. Sadly, Operation Blackout doesn't so much roll out as stall on the starting line. Combat is clunky and chaotic in all the wrong ways. Aiming feels like wrestling the stick of a busted arcade cabinet, and enemies seem programmed to ignore everything except you, even if your AI teammates are literally punching them in the face. Visuals also don't help. Character models are stiff, animation shoddy, and cutscenes are told through static comic panels, which which would be fine if they didn't feel like budget placeholders. Split screen is your only multiplayer option, and performance issues on some platforms make it feel like you're playing underwater. There are flashes of nostalgia here and there, but they vanish as soon as you start playing. With no meaningful unlocks, shallow character variety, and a story that barely holds it together, Operation Blackout squanders its license at every turn. The Lord of the Rings, Gollum. So close, one that we all saw coming right from day one, a game so bad it immediately earned a place in the Mount Doom of disastrous licensed releases. Gollum attempts to deliver a stealth platformer about Middle-earth's most pitiful creature, but the only thing it really nails is the pitiful part. Movement felt like Gollum was wearing ankle weight, with platforming so imprecise you miss jumps that look impossible to fail. Stealth amounts to crouching in grass and waiting for AI dumber than an orc on pipeweed to wander past. And the moral choice system, Gollum versus Smeagol, is a cool idea, but it doesn't land with any weight or memorability. Visually, Lord of the Rings Gollum is not much better. Middle-earth just looks like it's been through a power cut. Environments are flat and lifeless, character models uncanny, and Gollum himself looks, well, you can see. Add a healthy dose of bugs, performance issues, frame drops, broken animations, and a deluxe edition that charged extra for elvish dialogue, and you've got the full package. Developers Daedalic even had to apologize post-launch, which is never a great sign, and then they got caught out for using AI on the apology text itself. Gollum could have offered a fresh, character-driven story in Tolkien's world. Instead, it was a tedious, broken mess that did for The Lord of the Rings what Lava did for Isildur's sword.